Hi, Tom Lyons, CEO of Taruga Minerals Limited. We're a greenfields exploration company advancing new discoveries of rare earth elements in a new province in South Australia. We've also got some really large and exciting copper targets we're looking at advancing at the moment in South Australia, nearby some major world-class deposits. We've got a really strong cash position of 4.1 million. Our exploration model is very low cost. Most of our mineralization's at the surface, and we're working through some advanced metallurgical scoping studies on our rare earths at the moment.
Tom, good to see you, man.
Good to see you, Matt.
So all the buzzwords there, right? Rare earths, copper, Paul Cronin, everything.
That's right. That's right.
No. So obviously we know Paul from elsewhere, done rather well there, and he's heavily involved with this thing. Want to just trying to understand what it is that you've set out to do, and we'll talk about that in a second. But first of all, who are you? What have you done? That's relevant to what you're trying to do here?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a geologist by trade. I worked in mining and exploration for about 10 years in South Australia. And I founded the private company Strikeline Resources, which held the assets that we now the core projects for under Taruga Minerals Limited. Right. Taruga purchased my private company and made me the CEO in 2020. And we've been developing that ground ever since.
Okay. And right, let's try and understand the business plan here, because we've got rare earths, we've got copper. So the kind of key, what are we focused on? Yeah,
so we started out purely as a copper focus.
Okay.
Because our flagship project, Flinders project, was obviously a copper play. It's right near Olympic Dam, Carrapateena. It's got the right kind of mineralization there, that, IOCG style mineralization.
Right. So copper's quite topical. Price is quite good. Everyone wants it. We're running out of it, apparently. There's a big EV revolution, infrastructure, money being spent all around the world. So why did you say you started out there? Are you parking it up or something?
No, we're not parking it up. It's been on hold. That project's been on hold for a while.
Why?
Well, we're waiting on some government approvals to regain access to what was our flagship project, the Flinders project. Yeah. And we started our operations there. That was the first project that came into the Taruga deal. We subsequently added in a series of other projects that were in the Strikeline portfolio and just folded everything in Strikeline into Taruga. And yes, we started as copper focused, but we have discovered some significant rare earths at one of our projects. And we're the first company in South Australia to have discovered rare earths in this province. So we're really excited about it.
Okay, and is that waiting for government approvals?
No.
That's cracking on, right?
That's all approved. That's all cracking on. Yeah, there's only one. So we've got 4,000 square kilometres of tenement. So really large land holding. There's 4 major projects in there, 2 of which are probably our top 2 projects. Flinders project is our top copper project. Mount Craig project is our top rare earth project.
So let's focus on copper, because I want to be able to park that up, okay? Because you're waiting for what sort of permits? Sorry?
So it's ministerial approvals under the Aboriginal Heritage Act.
Right. So you can't do anything there at the moment?
We can do some work. We can do geophysics. We can fly airborne surveys and stuff like that. But we're just holding off to wait for those approvals, because we want to make sure we've got that full confidence to increase our investment spend there. We're really excited to get back there. We're working with the government, collaborating with the government to get those approvals, and we remain very hopeful that a decision will be soon.
How long's that process been so far, and when do you expect
It's been a long process, and it's been difficult for our shareholders. A lot of our shareholders came in initially for the Flinders project. That was what drew people into this new story, and a lot of those people have held on and throughout the course, and we have had to change direction and go to new projects. We've had a lot of success at our new projects, but there are a lot of people who are really waiting on those approvals to come through and excited about them.
Right. Any reason they won't?
About 2 years.
It's been 2 years. Any reason they won't, or have you any sense of timeline? Because that seems a long time.
So it is a long time. A few things have happened in the landscape since we first came into that project and we first put our application. It's meant to be 6 to 9 months for a decision to be made. I'm not aware of any applications historically in South Australia that hadn't been approved, but I don't know for sure. I haven't seen one. The reason it went longer is a few things. The consultation from the governing body who manages these was perhaps not handled perfectly, and it's had to get extended by 3 months a few times. And then when a decision was meant to be passed, the independent committee had made, so the application goes through an independent committee. They had made their final decision and their recommendations. They'd submitted those, and a decision was meant to be made in March of 2022. Right. Now that coincided with the election, the state government election, and the Premier at the time was the Aboriginal Affairs Minister. And so although there was no blackout period or no cold period on making decisions, they decided not to make the decision until the election was over. Yeah. And Liberal lost, new government came in, and the clock kind of started ticking again. But also what happened was there was another application in the state which had been approved, and it was at the Supreme Court, and it was being challenged by a local Aboriginal corporation, and the Supreme Court judgment, actually the corporation won against the government, and they had to revoke that approval. Now that created a situation where Aboriginal Affairs and the other regulatory bodies which govern the decision making needed to revisit how they issue these approvals to make sure that they're robust and that these types of challenges on a decision can't happen in the future. And so that review process we know now is finished. So
So what we're saying is going through a process. Are you getting zero value for that copper asset at the moment?
Yes.
Okay. So let's try and understand what you've got there. What do you know about that copper asset? Because what I'm trying to understand is at some point it may have some value. I want to understand what that value could be from where you are today. So what do you know about the copper asset?
Well, the value of that project is huge.
Right.
It's massive.
There's
a lot of energy behind it, a lot of...
Near Olympic Dam is a good start, but what has happened in the past? What existing data is there? What have you created?
So no one's ever held... So I pegged the ground as free ground. We saw I applied a system mentality when I looked at those historical copper mines over about 15 Ks of strike, and everyone who'd explored there in the past had considered all these copper mines to be independent of one another and not connected.
Right.
There's an old school mentality of looking at the surface mineralization.
Yeah.
But when I looked at the geochem and looked at the historical mining records and the petrology, I could tell that all these deposits had the same petrology, same mineralogy, and a similar geochemistry. Now it's really unlikely to get everything exactly the same if there wasn't some common source or they weren't connected beneath the surface.
Okay.
So I pegged that ground to apply a systems mentality to see whether we could gather evidence to indicate that these things were connected. Right. And there was evidence for large-scale deposits beneath the surface, which these things were leading to. And I always use the analogy of like a rose bud blooming. We're looking at the petals at the surface, but what we're really tracing down is where they connect to this bud.
Right. So have you spent any money? I know you're not spending any money now, and you've explained in a very detailed way why you shouldn't do that until you've got more certainty. But have you spent any money on it before that? Before this?
Yeah, we have spent a fair bit of money. We spent probably over $1 million on the project, and we only we had more money to spend there.
Yeah.
And I think that, so just going back on the evidence, there's high-grade copper at the surface.
Yeah.
So really high-grade copper, rock chips.
Like what?
Like 50% copper,
wow.
like really high-grade stuff.
Crazy.
They were mining it in the 1800s, like some of these little deposits at 20% copper run-of-mine grade. Small tonnage, but really high-grade stuff. And they're in these hematite breccias, so it's like iron breccias, which is quite rare and indicates that it's similar to what we see at Carapatina and Olympic Dam.
So once you see one breccia, you usually see multiple breccias.
That's right.
Which is what your hypothesis about.
Correct.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so that's kind of park it, wait and see. But it has, if it all goes well, it has some value, and you'll presumably raise capital to kind of try and do something with that at some point. So we're over here, rare earths. That's not a bad space to be playing in. But the question people ask all the time is, how do you advance something like that forward? Because obviously people talk about the China rare earths component, and they talk about ex-China. Ex-China is a little bit hard because there's not too many people who can actually take it through the full value chain there. So what's your plan with that?
Yeah, sure. So, the exciting thing about the deposit that we've discovered at Morgan's Creek, which is a prospect at the Mount Craig project. Mount Craig project's about 1,500 square kilometres on its own, so it's massive. No one's ever discovered rare earths in this province before, ever. And
what are we talking about?
So it's magnet rare earth and heavy rare earth rich deposit.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so we're looking at, and I haven't seen any other projects that have these kind of numbers, but about 34% average magnet rare earth. And that's the money.
I forgot. I kind of got excited there. Maybe not everyone in the audience knows it. So the difference between lights and heavies, and the fact why heavies are slightly better economically.
Well, people think that lights aren't worth money and that the heavies are worth all the money, and it's in part true, in part not true. So you look at China, going back on your previous question, China has been able to increase, they're the major supplier of heavy rare earths, as everybody knows. But if you look at their production, they've increased their tonnage production of rare earth significantly over the last 6 years. And their light rare earth production has gone up massively in the last 6 years, but their heavy rare earth production has not been increased in the last 6 years at all. What that shows us is that not only have China probably high-graded their heavy rare earth sources, but the grade of the heavy rare earths is dropping and the deposits are depleting. And therefore, there's a gap being created in the market for heavy rare earths in particular. And of the heavy rare earths, the ones that are of most commercial significance are the two magnet heavy rare earths, dysprosium and terbium. So the magnet rare earths are made up of two lights and two heavies. Neodymium, praseodymium are the lights, dysprosium and terbium are the heavies. And we're looking at, big increase in value as you head from praseodymium up to dysprosium, which is over $1 million a ton versus $150,000 US a ton. And what we've got is a very high proportion of magnet rare earths, so the light and the heavy, but also out of all the clay-hosted rare earth projects that we've seen, we have, if not the highest, one of the highest heavy magnet rare earth contents in the deposit.
Right, okay. We're doing, okay, I would have said 2 years ago, rare earths, no one cared, right? Retail didn't understand it. It was a very erratic market in terms of the pricing, etc. But critical mineral lists seem to come high on the priority over the course of the last 2 years. It's a much better understood space. So maybe there's a little bit more interest in this. So how do you advance a project like that in Australia, which is not really, doesn't seem to, I don't know if the market here in Australia does know too much about rare earths. There's not too much optionality for investors. So what kind of share register have you got at the moment? Mainly retail, is it?
It's mainly retail. We do have some institutional investment.
Right.
We just raised $3.5 million in September last year.
Is that easy?
And a significant, well, I mean, it's never easy to...
Well, 22 sucked, right? Let's
22
be clear,
sucked.
right? But you raised it.
We raised it, yeah, and we brought in some fantastic institutional investors that came in and increased that proportion of institutional investors in a higher percentage than we've ever had on our register before.
Right.
So really excited by that. We've got, top 20 has a very large holding. I'm a major shareholder. Our directors all participated in the capital raise. Paul Cronin, Eric Demori, Dave Chapman. So, if you don't know Eric Demori and Paul Cronin were the founders of Adriatic Metals. They've got the Balkan polymetallic deposits. It's massive. It's gone into production, and they've created a huge amount of value with that. Dave Chapman's on our board. He's the founder of Dreadnought Resources, which have a huge rare earth story in West Australia. And so, we really have a board who are, know how to take projects from 0 to 100 into commercial production from greenfields. So that's really exciting.
But even they're going to trip over the kind of issues that you are on the copper, right?
Well,
so,
but
what's their advice to you? What's their advice to you here on saying, right, let's get this rare earth thing going? Because you've been sitting around. The share price has been battered, right? Everyone's been battered.
It has,
but that's where you're at. You've got some cash to kind of advance the project. What are you trying to do? Rare earth is a tricky one, right? So you may say that we're eventually. China will kind of come into the mix here. Or you've got a lot of brave souls in the rare earth space saying, do you know what, we're going to do this ex-China. It'll be fine. No problemo. We've got this sorted. I don't care which side of the fence you sit, because money is money. But you're at the exploration stage. You've got to prove up a whole bunch of stuff, right? You've got to do the grade. You've got to do the scale of this thing. You've got to say, we know where we're going. What's your plan? Yeah.
So key thing to any rare earth element deposits metallurgy.
Right.
And that's what we're focusing on at the moment.
Okay.
In terms of getting projects across the line and approvals in Australia, and you're saying it could be difficult. The reason I mentioned our board is because we know how to get approvals. We've got a board and management who know how to get approvals. We're required. We've got a huge amount of state government funding. So we've received almost $1 million from the state government for rare earth element exploration and for copper exploration. So we're heavily supported by the state government already. We've got infrastructure on the project. We've got rail line running through. We've got high grid power, public roads, regional workforces, ports nearby. So we're not like a remote project as well.
Just that kind of state funding, is it conditional? I mean, what do they want in return? Because it's not like you have huge employment prospects anytime soon, and eventually your funding requirements will demand that you listen to whoever can bring the money in. So what does the state oblige you to do? Or conditional? $1 million, here you go. Yeah,
well, we spend $2, they give us $1 back, but a lot of this is a very competitive grant. And so this Accelerated Discovery Initiative grant, we've received 3 of them. In 2021, we were the single largest recipient out of all companies. We beat Fortescue and every other company in South Australia. We got the largest grant. And it includes funding for Aboriginal employment. What the hell? Yeah, they're getting grants. Seriously? I don't know why.
What for? They got cash.
They got cash, but they're doing it. Okay. So really what they validate our project, goes to the geological survey. They say, are they likely to make a major discovery for rare earths or copper? Yes. So we will issue the grant because they've got a good chance at opening up exploration expenditure in a new province.
Right.
So really we're working in a province where there has been a low level of exploration expenditure, but the potential for mineral deposits is very high. And so what they want to see is increased mineral expenditure. And so
Okay.
if we were to make discoveries, which we are in this area, hence why we keep getting more and more funding, that means that other companies, other investors are going to come in and start pouring money into this ground, which has been sitting there stagnant for a long time.
It's advertising.
Yeah, so that's kind of where it's at. And we continue to get support. And that support's been even extended now with our Geological Survey of South Australia just inviting us to accompany them at PDAC in Canada and present alongside them as I think the only company from South Australia who are joining them. So it's an additional validation there. They're really showcasing what the area has to show.
Were you the first ones they asked?
No, well, I think so.
You know what it's like.
I think so.
It's a dinner party and you're invited, but you realise 4 other people said no.
Well, you have to ask the directors of our geological survey.
Well, all joking aside, that's a big deal, right? Yeah. PDAC is one of the biggest attended sort of mining conferences in the world. 25,000 grey-haired white folk turning up and talking mining. It's horrific if you're looking in from outside, but the conversations that happen internally are great. The exposure to you is fantastic, and if it's anything like Cape Town, a lot of investors there. As well. So, okay, you're going to stand up and do a little talk there. It's good news. Are you going to plan this like a military exercise and try and find other new sources of funds to get interested in rare earths in Australia?
Well, I mean, I'm always in the opinion that we're building a foundation here, right? I always use the analogy, if you're going to launch a rocket to the moon, you need to build your NASA launch facility and make sure you've got a strong foundation, which is ready for when things really start to move in the company. Because if you haven't built that foundation and consolidated that foundation, then it's going to be difficult to launch to the next level that we're going to go to. And so what I'm working on now is that. And obviously when I'm in Canada, I'm going to be working on making those relationships and connections and bringing that interest in to consolidate.
Well, the reason I say that, because you kind of got this, the US did their IRA. You've kind of got, even the Canadians got the kind of critical minerals funding in place. It seems to be the North Americans are looking to friendly nations to secure their future critical mineral list, and obviously rare earths is a big part of that. Automotive sector there is vast. You're talking NdPr amongst other things. It's the place to be, and Australia is looked upon favourably by North America, so it seemed to be sensible to go and have conversations there. We've seen OEMs move upstream and fund mining companies. It's something they would never have dreamt of 2-3 years ago. So it's a big deal. So good luck with that. Let us know how you get on. But back to today, you got a bit of money. Let's be clear about how you're allocating that money in 2023 and why we should care.
Sure. So we raised $3.5 million. We've got $4.1 million in the bank right now. Yeah. So we've got a very strong cash position for a company our size. Our exploration's cheap. We're focusing most of that money on the rare earth element development at the moment. So it's about 75% rare earths, 25% copper. We're continuing the copper because we've got huge copper potential in our projects as well. While Flinders project is not available, it's about 75% focused on the rare earths. And a key part of that right now is the metallurgy and mineralogy.
Why do you say that? Because how much drilling have you done? How much do you know?
So we've done... So in the last couple of years, we've done about 20,000 meters of drilling.
Okay, you got a chunk of data to look after that. And the metallurgy, if you got the team, you outsource that, do you?
We've got the world's best rare earth element metallurgy team.
Being who?
Being Gavin Beer. So he's Perth-based. He's arguably one of the world's best commercial rare earth element process metallurgists. He's worked on any major project you can conceive of or think about. He's worked on it in some capacity. And so he's worked with us. I believe we're the only clay-hosted rare earth company that he's agreed to work with at this point. And we've also got Bob Ring from ANSTO. So ANSTO is the world's best rare earth element processing test work facility. They've got pilot plants for all of the big projects. And they're doing our metallurgy. So Gavin's advising us from a commercial perspective through his experience working with companies around the world. And Bob Ring and ANSTO are advising us from the academic side and from the processing side with their lab. They've got the labs doing the test work. So we're collaborating in that sense. And collectively, that's arguably the world's best team you could put together. So we are confident that we're going to make significant advancements on the metallurgical flow sheet. We've had good initial leaching results from the metallurgy we did with ANSTO and released in December. It's a fantastic first step. We're looking to improve that and reduce the cost of the reagents that go into that and just make that flow sheet even more commercial, and that's what we're working on at the moment.
Okay. So, and we kind of kept it fairly simple today because I think it's not many people understand the commodities we're talking about. But with the people who do, in the conversations that you have, obviously Clays hasn't had a good name for itself, ex-China, up until maybe a couple of years ago. There's another Aussie company with a project in Southern Africa. Won't name names. This is your interview, not theirs. Who kind of, I think, got out there and told the story, and they're starting to kind of, get some real traction there. There's a couple of companies in North America who got clays. Again, they've had a tough 5 years or so, but I think people are starting to understand that perhaps clays can deliver into the space. Perhaps the technical nut has been cracked, so to speak. So again, do you find your institutional or potential institutional share or potential shareholders, do they understand enough about the challenges that you face, or are they still sort of sitting back and going, do you know what, we'll just wait a little bit longer, one, for the network, and two, to sort of see how these guys insert themselves into this ecosystem and which path they choose to go down?
I think everyone understands it, right? When you asked, was it easy to raise capital? Well, I mean, I'm not going to say it was easy, but it wasn't that difficult because the fundamentals of our project stand up, against all the other projects that are available in the ASX at the moment.
Yeah.
The grade is very high. We've got mineralization from the surface. So the first meter you drill into is ore. The magnet rare earth content's high, the heavy rare earth content's high. And so when you put those things together, the project fundamentals are fantastic, and you can't find a like project on the market at the moment. And that's why it was easy to attract excitement and attention. Then really now it's just about making sure we can develop a commercial flow sheet, which means we can produce a product for less than it costs to process it. And not all clay-hosted projects around the world and around Australia are the same. We know the Chinese ones are different, and no one's really found anything exactly like a Chinese deposit, even though a lot of the data is kind of hidden about Chinese deposits. We have a basic understanding of those deposits, but the projects in West Australia aren't the same as the projects in South Australia. So we're seeing a competitive advantage definitely in the projects that we're seeing in our project in South Australia compared to projects that we're seeing.
But isn't that also, you're positioning that's therein lies the opportunity, because I was different, but isn't that also the problem? Because there's not a kind of standardization of the technology to kind of crack this. So people are going to look to your team and go, right, who on the team has done this before? Who knows what we're talking about? Or is it all kind of bought in knowledge, as you've described for the metallurgy? So that's some of the issues you're going to come against. So, well,
hence why we have the world's best rare earth element processing team working with us right now, being Ansto and Gavin Beer.
Right, okay.
So, we're confident that we're going to have, we know all the tools and all the things to apply to develop the best flow sheet. But we also already have, the reason I mentioned the project fundamentals, we're ahead of so many others because of those fundamentals already. So the metallurgical challenges that all of these projects face, all these deposits face, a little bit less significant for us because our other financial fundamentals are higher. The basket value is higher.
So 20,000 meters drilled. Are you saying we're done now? It's all kind of homogenous. We know what we've got there. Was there more work to do on the drilling side as well?
Sorry, not all the drilling was for rare earths.
Okay.
And the rare earths were discovered in part by accident whilst looking for copper.
Right. That's what I'm kind of trying to.
So we've done about 3,000 or 4,000 meters.
Right. So it's not enough, right? Because absolutely. Yeah. What I don't want people to walk away thinking is, oh, it's quite easy to do rare earths. We've just done 3,000 or 4,000 meters of drilling. We do some network and we're done, right?
Discoveries aren't easy to make,
right?
And resources aren't always easy to build. These are things that you need skilled technical people that are extremely committed and devoted to do, and that's what we're focused on at the moment. So we need to do more drilling to develop a JORC resource, and that's the next phase after we next advancement in the metallurgy. Then following that, we'll commence our JORC resource drill out.
Okay, so a couple of questions for you before we kind of wrap it up. So, what do you think investors have got to look forward to with regards to what you're doing, right? So you've kind of come into rare earths accidentally, but you've explained that you've kind of got a team on board who understand how to move this thing forward, not just on the network, but in terms of building companies and in terms of the rare earth ecosystem, as it were. But you've got so much money available to you today. You're going to have to raise some money, presumably before the end of the year, to kind of get some of these things over the line, aren't you?
Well, we might have to, but really, the money we raised was to ensure that we could deliver a JORC resource, including the metallurgy required, without having to raise capital again.
Okay.
And we're still in that position now. So we're confident that we could deliver a JORC resource under the current funding. Now, given as the year goes on, where we find ourselves in placement of the market and market sentiment and the state of our projects, there may be a decision to raise capital again prior to the definition of a JORC resource, but we'll work that out as we get down the line.
But it's not just a stake in the sand, because you haven't done much drilling on the rare earth bits. It's going to be of a certain size, and you're going to have to upgrade that, upsize that, and kind of continue to move that thing along that curve, as it were. So you deliver a JORC, great. More drilling. I mean, what else can you do with the capital available to you?
Yeah, I think what people should be really excited about is the fact that we haven't been focused on rare earths for a long time. And the first drilling program that we focused on rare earths, we made the discovery at Morgan's Creek. And the fundamentals of that project.
Define discovery for me.
Well, I mean, I say discovery. We've discovered high-grade clay acid rare earths from surface, with thick mineralization over a long strike. So, we are that to us that's never been done before in this province, never been done before in this region. So it's a first. And I think the exciting thing is that everything, even the limited drilling, is actually a blue sky opportunity as opposed to a negative. It's positive because it means that if we start to apply what we've learned in that discovering those rare earths across the broader portfolio, there's a huge opportunity for new discoveries because that same geology extends over 34 kilometres of strike. We've never looked there elsewhere for rare earths before. So we're going to work on the metallurgy. We're confident we're going to be able to deliver advancements on the metallurgy. We're going to progress, hopefully, toward defining a JORC resource and also look to make new greenfield discoveries across the broader project. Okay,
but if I compare that to some of the rare earths companies that kind of come through here, you're earlier stage than most, aren't you? So you've got a ways to go. There's more advanced companies than you out there. So why should people kind of look at you versus what they're doing? Because it's a complicated space, right?
It is complicated, and a lot of people are valuing a large resource with no metallurgy over a pre-resource discovery with great basket fundamentals and good metallurgy or advanced metallurgy. And so we just need to educate people a little bit more that the metallurgy is key. Okay. And that our metallurgy so far is positive, and we've got the right team to be able to deliver on advancements in that flow sheet.
Okay, well, good luck with that. Thanks for coming over and seeing us. And I know you're going down to Fremantle tomorrow, but you've nipped over from Sydney a day early to see us, and I appreciate that.
Yeah,
we love a rare earth story, and there's a new one. It's from a low base, so if you get it right, obviously the upside is tremendous. So stay in touch with us, okay?
Will do. Yeah, thanks, Matthew.